Hello everybody. In 2022 we celebrate 140 years since New Zealand's first successful shipment of frozen meat to Britain. And in this episode of Talking Pictures, we examine that revolutionary event in our nation's history, an event which paved the way for an industry that would be the cornerstone of the New Zealand economy for generations to come. The key men behind the shipment were William Saltor Davidson, who was the British-based general manager of the New Zealand and Australian Land Company, which farmed over 1 million hectares in Australia and New Zealand, and Thomas Bryden, the company's superintendent in New Zealand. Davidson and Bryden had watched the first shipments of frozen meat from Australia with interest and decided to experiment with doing a similar thing in New Zealand. Davidson chartered the Shaw, Saville and Albion Company ship Dunedin and had it fitted out with a coal-powered Bell Coleman refrigeration plant. While at Totara Estate south of Oamaru, preparations were made to supply the meat. In November 1881, Bryden visited Totara and asked the estate manager John McPherson to build a slaughterhouse there. McPherson's abattoir, as seen in this plan drawn 60 years later, included a hanging room with capacity for 350 carcasses at a time and a skin store, as well as the killing shed. Butcher Alex Thompson, who had accompanied Bryden on a trip to Sydney in 1880 to see how the Australians had prepared the meat for shipping, hired a gang of butchers and taught them how to dress the carcasses for the London market. Slaughtering commenced in early December. Each day between 4 and 6 a.m, the carcasses were carted to a nearby railway siding for freighting to Port Chalmers, where the Dunedin was now moored. The rail cars had strips of canvas nailed around the doors to keep out smoke and dust as the trains travelled through tunnels. And on hot days, ice packed in boxes of sawdust was sent back in the empty cars to help keep the rail cars cool during the next load. Once aboard the Dunedin, the carcasses were sewn in calico before being stowed in the refrigerating chamber, where they took 24 hours to freeze. On the 12th of December, with hundreds of carcasses already frozen and more on their way, disaster struck when the crankshaft on the refrigerating plant broke. The operation was brought to a standstill for a month while a new crankshaft was made. The carcasses were sold on the local market before they spoiled, and those that didn't sell were dumped. With the replacement parts finally installed, stocking the ship resumed on the 10th of January 1882. On the 15th of February, the Dunedin finally set off with about 5,000 carcasses on board. Passengers were few. All but 2 of the 60 passengers who had originally planned to travel on the Dunedin had cancelled their bookings in fear of the crankshaft breaking again and sinking the ship. When the vessel reached the tropics, another problem with the refrigerating plant did occur, although not with the crankshaft, which was said to have worked even better than the original one had. The problem this time was that, although the machinery was at full pressure, the temperature in the hold began rising. A hole was cut in the deck above the ducts that circulated cold air through the hold to try and work out what was going wrong. This revealed that the ducts had become blocked with ice, requiring someone to crawl through the ducts to clear them out. Sparks from the refrigerating plant also set the sails alight on 2 occasions during the voyage, but the Dunedin did eventually arrive in London in one piece. As for the precious cargo, only 1 carcass had to be condemned. A consignment of the carcasses was conveyed to the Smithfield market each night, so they were still frozen when the butchers came to buy them in the morning. And within a fortnight, all had been sold. The meat fetched 6 pence per pound on average, a considerably larger return than it would have achieved in New Zealand. Later in 1882, in the wake of the successful experiment, New Zealand's first freezing works was built near Dunedin at Burnside. More ships were fitted with refrigeration plants, and in 1884 the first purpose-built vessel for the frozen meat trade, the Elderslie, was launched. The Elderslie was named after another large North Otago estate, whose owner, John Reed, had arranged for the vessel to operate directly between the port of Oamaru and Britain. The Dunedin also began making voyages from Oamaru. It was about to set off on yet another run from there in 1890 when one of its crew went missing. After more than 30 years at sea, Alexander McClellan had decided to jump ship. A couple of years later, he married Teresa McLaughlin. Family legend says she was the reason he jumped ship and likely aided his escape. After jumping ship, McClellan discovered he still had this key from the Dunedin stashed in his pocket. The key and ship would never be reunited, as the 1890 voyage proved to be the Dunedin's last. The ship disappeared without trace somewhere in the vicinity of Cape Horn. It is presumed to have sunk after crashing into an iceberg. The story of the Dunedin was at an end, but its role in shaping the history of New Zealand is certainly not forgotten. See you next time, and thanks for watching.